What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Gen Sales Leader Podcast. I'm here with Dean Fiacco, who is the founder of Scaled Mail, a inbox provider for cold email infrastructure, as well as Beanstalk Consulting, a cold email agency. Welcome to the podcast, Dean.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. So let's talk about founder stuff, because I know that you and I are kind of similar journeys. We both have kind of two businesses going at the same time, a cold email
Yeah.
outbound agency, and then also another thing that's more on the technology side. For you, it's infrastructure. So how are you dealing with those two businesses? Why don't we just start with what are the businesses? What do you do? And then how is it being a founder in two businesses at the same time?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with Beanstalk. That was the first business. So this is now a cold outbound agency where we basically help businesses that for whatever reason maybe don't have the budget or the wherewithal to build out an internal team of SDRs or even salespeople to do outbound growth activity. And they can basically work with us to do the cold email, the LinkedIn outreach, the cold calling, whatever that looks like for them, and bolt us on as an extension to the business. So been doing that for a couple of years now in various iterations. My background's tech sales, so it was a natural extension of a lot of the things that I used to do in the chair now as a business for others and taking some of those learnings from, being in the boiler rooms myself and knowing what works and what scales and what doesn't. Out of that, we very quickly in our cold email segment ran into frequent frustrating issues that I'm sure many in your audience have run into before, where, look, it's all fine and dandy to set up 10 or 20 Google or Microsoft inboxes for cold outbound. That's not that crazy hard. But as you scale into the hundreds or thousands of inboxes, this goes from something that's an annoyance for an hour into a real problem, especially when all of that complexity gets multiplied. The chances that something is going wrong with any one inbox at any one time starts to shoot through the roof. And I'm sure a lot of people have run into you could hire VAs for this, et cetera. But again, that's its own set of issues, people issues. So we really built Scaled Mail for ourselves initially at Beanstalk. I said to the team, I wanted a point and click experience for setting up and managing inboxes. We built it for ourselves. It worked great for us and our clients. I sold it on the side to a couple of agency friends that I had, and now it's morphed into its own standalone business at this point as a SaaS to help people with this exact problem. Setting up, managing, and configuring cold email inboxes at scale.
That's awesome, man. I also want to pay you a compliment. You got a very good vibe. I know that's like a weird thing to say, but like I interact with a lot of business owners.
Let me call my wife in here. Let her hear you say that.
Yeah, exactly. What do they say about, they say like for every person you meet, there's a different version of yourself in the world because everyone experiences each other differently. No, you got a good vibe. Even the first time we met, I was like, there's just a warm energy about you. And I think that's an important thing in business because, it's like at the end of the day, we're all human. We're dealing with human people, human problems, human issues, human communication. And it comes down to like the old adage of how do you make somebody feel when you leave them? So anyways, just a compliment for you. Also, anyone listening, I'm also a client of Scaled Mail. So we use your infrastructure. Fantastic. So anybody who's looking for cold email infrastructure, you got to go over. What's the website for them?
Just scaledmail.com. So scaled,
okay, cool.
SCALED, mail.com.
So I think to dive into a piece of that though, why would somebody do that versus say going straight to Google and just, buying a $7 per month Google Workspace account? And I know that's obvious for anybody who's deep in the cold email world right now, but some of our viewers are marketing directors, CROs. They're not in lead generation every day. They don't know these types of discussions. So can you break it down as simply as possible?
Yeah. So I think you have to first back up into what is the strategy that necessitates even using a tool like ours. I still run into a lot of teams that when I talk to them about how they do outbound email, it's some version of, we have a list in HubSpot. We add a bunch of people on a list to an email blast and we shoot it out. And the problem with that is then I'll usually ask, well, how is that going? And the answer is something like, oh, email doesn't work anymore. And I go, well, It's probably more the way you're doing it. Now, granted, email's gotten a lot harder. The bar for success has gotten lower and lower. I remember being a rep in like 2015, you could shoot out 200 emails, you'd get like a 30% reply rate. You book a couple meetings. And I looked at all the guys making cold calls like they were morons because this was so easy. Now, a 2% reply rate is a good campaign, generally speaking. And you've got to make the top line number of, the total emails sent a lot larger of a number to get to the same point. But at the same time, you compare it to the cost of ads, and it's still one of the least expensive channels there is for outbound. So, anyways, backing up, sending from one domain, Google and Microsoft, the ESPs, the email service providers, have gotten really good at figuring out when there's spikes in volume. So whether it's a tool like HubSpot, SalesLoft, Outreach, etc., they're very, very good at seeing when there's, let's say the typical inbox on your website sends 2, 5, 10 emails an hour, and then one is trying to or attempting to send 20, 50, 100, etc. Same thing at the domain level, right? There's also just, hey, what's the typical outbound traffic for this website or domain on any given day? And by the way, what are the engagement metrics with those outbound emails? A lot of people are sending out outbound emails and getting almost no replies. They're getting spam complaints, etc. And all of that's going to roll back to the reputation of the domain, your likelihood to inbox in the future, and the decision for any future campaign by Microsoft or Google on whether that subsequent email goes to the inbox or to the junk folder. So what a lot of people have adjusted to is moving their outbound campaigns away from their primary domain and really treating that as sacred, which I'd be an advocate for. Should be just your business emails, your invoices, marketing to your opt-in lists, but anything cold outbound should be set aside and done from domains that you don't care as much about. So if you're nextgensalessystems.com, you don't want to send any cold emails from there. You want to go and grab something similar. We're not trying to trick people. We want them to know it's your brand. So maybe go Next Gen Sales Systems or get Next Gen Sales Systems, etc., and use that lookalike domain, set up some inboxes on it, and use that for cold outbound. And that way, if at some point the level of complaints or the lack of engagement catches up to that domain and it stops delivering to the inbox, it's not existential for the business. You can just cancel that domain, purchase another one, and get back to where you were going. Now, this strategy was manageable for most people up until the point where the reply rates dropped from around 10% to 2%, because the issue becomes you need a lot of these to make this strategy work in 2025. It's not 5 domains and 10 inboxes. It's in many cases multiples of that to get to where the outcome you need. And at that point, the pointing and clicking of setting all these inboxes up becomes a really burdensome process. It becomes, Slack channel nightmare or VA nightmare, even if you're outsourcing it. And for a lot of people, the SaaS solution experience is just a much better experience where they get inboxes delivered to them in a white glove fashion into their cold email sequencer than trying to navigate all of this themselves. So that's really the gap or the void that we're looking to fill.
Yeah, 100%. So anyone who's listening who's not in the cold email space or cold agency space, obviously you know this, so I'm not speaking to you at this moment, but this isn't the day where you would go and buy a couple Gmail accounts and then go manually send up and warm up your campaign. Even if you knew to do that. I mean, I know people, to your point, back in like 2014 where like warm up wasn't even a thing like it is now, where it was like, I just rip it, like no biggie.
Yeah.
We're not going to get flagged. Where now it's like, okay, best practices is 2-week to 3-week warm up, and there's a whole process around that. And
the
I
number
remember,
of emails you can send in a day is just much lower. People used to send 100 emails per box per day. Now 25 is pushing it in many cases. So yeah, it's just the dynamics have changed, and all forces are pushing people into fewer sends per inbox, fewer cents per domain, more domains, more inboxes. And so
Exactly.
that dynamic is really what's been fueling the growth of tools like
What do
Scaled
you
Mail.
see as the ratio of domains to inbox?
It depends on the setup. So, for instance, on Microsoft, we have a pretty unique setup with 25 inboxes per domain. But each of those inboxes only sends 5 to 10 cold emails a day. And
Mm.
so in aggregate, you can actually push out a good amount of emails, but per inbox, we keep it pretty constrained. For Google, we advocate 2 inboxes per domain. Sometimes people push us to 3. We'll do it. But the safest option is generally less emails sent and less inboxes per domain equals more, safer, longer lasting inboxes with better deliverability. That tends to be
Mm-hmm.
the truism, but obviously people want to maximize their budgets, and I get that as well. So for Google, 2 to 1, 3 to 1 maybe. Microsoft, if you're setting it up yourselves, the same. And if you're using a tool like Scaled Mail, we've got a unique setup there. For our SMTP mailboxes, which for anybody wondering is basically, hey, if you're not using Google or Microsoft, you're using a private mail server somewhere. So we just bucket that as other effectively. We'll usually set those up at 4 mailboxes per domain.
Mm. So anyone who's listening, if you are absolutely baffled by the math of this, how many inboxes, how many sends per day, how many domains to inbox, how many leads can you get from that amount of inboxes based upon that sending volume? I actually happen to, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, if you're following me, you probably know where it is, but it's Benjamin Reed. In there, there's a school group link, and within that, there's a free lesson called the Cold Email Calculator, where I have a spreadsheet that you can get that literally you can plug in how many meetings you want, and then it will take all these assumptions on reply rate, like the 2%, and then the interested reply rate, the meeting set rate, and it will tell you how many inboxes you need. And so then you'll be able to go and purchase the right amount. Do you guys have a calculator like that or anything on your website, any other resources to help them find out how many emails they need?
Well, we've tried to make it even easier than that, where the experience, rather than making people do all of this math, when you log into Scaled Mail, you go to our marketplace. We have a bunch of different pre-built options, essentially.
Mm.
And you can choose what type of inboxes you would like, and then how much sending volume you require on a monthly
Oh, very cool.
basis. And
Okay.
so if you go in there and you say, well, look, we want to be sending 30,000 emails a month, or 10,000 emails a month, or 100,000 emails a month, there is a pre-built package where we've done the thinking for you that you can select and essentially just check out and move on rather than having to do all this crazy math. So I've
Awesome.
tried to limit the universe, not have 900 options on the store shelf so you don't have paralysis by analysis, and just you make it a little bit easier for people.
And that would be under your pricing settings, or where on the website would people find that?
Yeah, so inside on the website in the top right corner, you register, you make an account, that's free. And then we have a marketplace tab inside of the application, and all of the purchasing is done there. You just select the appropriate package, check out. We have a couple of steps, and then the order gets fulfilled. And 1 to 3 business days later, you've got inboxes in your cold email sequencer.
Boom, sold. Let's go. So anybody who's listening, Dean has a really good sense of user experience, and I'm saying that in 100% seriousness, where he's giving me some really good feedback on my own tool, RevyOps, where he's like, this could be simpler, or we could do this plugin here that allows that to be faster. And so I know that's something you care deeply about, and you said something along the lines of like a SaaS-like experience for inboxes. And I can say, as an agency owner, now I'm in a different world of agency owner hat, is that I just don't have time to manage that stuff. And even as a professional lead generation agency business owner, you would think like, oh, that's like all I think about is inbox deliverability and like setting this stuff up. But it's a small part of the overall business, because I do everything from cold calling to email to LinkedIn's, and there's a lot of moving parts, from copywriting and strategy to system and process automation, and the email deliverability and inbox stuff, and the setup stuff and the management of that is just a small piece of the world. So it needs to be simple, turnkey, good cost. It needs to work. It needs to give me the information I need if things aren't working, and it needs good support because things do happen, even if it's not anybody's fault. Like
Hmm.
Gmail just decides to slap everybody over some stupid thing, like an algorithm change. And I know your support has been fantastic. As soon as something goes on, you immediately message us and say, "Hey, Gmail just did this. We're on top of it. Don't worry." Anyways, I think that's something that I want as an agency owner, and I know you guys provide that, and so that's given me a lot of I would say confidence in my ability to scale. Um, Also, I would say that like we had I think that even the way we met was we had another large infrastructure provider who I will not name because I don't want to bash anybody, but we were all in on them. And we had thousands and thousands of inboxes on them, and they went down overnight. And so all of our agency clients were down for 2 weeks. I mean, we were getting threats of cancellation. The whole business was in flux. And so when I first met you, we did a deliverability webinar. If anyone wants to check that out, it's on YouTube where we talk with 9 other people about deliverability. But the reason I went on that quest to find other infrastructure providers was because I was like, I can't be locked in to one big provider, which is another advice for anybody is that you should have multiple providers just as a backup. Nonetheless, you were one of the top ones that stood out, and that's how we got going. But I needed somebody who I could trust, and it would just work. Anyways, there's a testimonial for you, but I
I
feel
think
free
I
to
need to
clip
clip
it.
that, throw that on the website.
I think you do. But yeah, anyone should definitely go check out if you're looking for inboxes because as I say in cold email, there's really 3 things that you got to consider. It's one, your list. Who's your ideal customer profile? Do you have the right people? And then 2 is deliverability. Do you actually get the message delivered? There's a whole world there. Dean's your guy for that. And then 3 is your offer. It's your copy. It's your messaging. If you get those 3 things right and you're really targeted, and there's a whole 5-hour webinar in each one of those categories that we could do, you got to focus on it, but you got to find experts in each niche. Don't try to do it all. And so Dean's your guy for that.
But
So,
yeah, I mean,
um,
the analogy I would make would be if you're running a cold calling business, right? You you don't necessarily need to build your own phone system. Okay. And it's probably not where you're going to find the alpha, the added value for clients and growing your business, right? Most likely it's going to be your hires, your training, your scripts, your niche. Those are all going to be the areas that really move the needle. Now, you have to have a good tool. You have to find something that's baseline good enough for you to compete. But there are presumably people that have spent a lot of time on that particular issue. And it's going to be a lot faster for you to go and grab something off the shelf with a little bit of research, obviously, and, testing things out, and then move on to other areas of the business where you can differentiate than to try to build everything from scratch. That's the closest analogy I would make. We're just doing that for inboxes instead of a phone system, for example.
in the agency world, it's been really interesting to watch. There's this concept of like in business schools, vertical integration versus horizontal. And the concept is very simple, which is do you buy or do you build?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the fundamental question. And it goes down to any company in history that you can think of. I mean, oil and gas companies, for example, I spent a lot of time in the oil and gas industry where these guys would go and just start to buy like buildings because they had tens of thousands of people working for them. And they're like, we're going to get into the real estate business versus just
Right.
renting. And all of a sudden they have to manage the building and deal with roofers and deal with plumbing. And it's like, well, now I'm no longer focused on my core competency. I'm focused on some other fringe element. And they might be saying like, oh, well, part of my supply chain for fulfillment is, I don't know, uh, oil transport, right? Well, I need to move this oil from point A to point B, even though the core competency from a normal oil and gas company is drilling for oil, not moving the oil to market. They're like, well, let me go buy a trucking company. And it's like all of a sudden they're in the trucking business. And it's like you have to hire
Right.
the drivers and manage the liability. And as a general rule of thumb, it just my belief, unless there's some really like real great scaling effects, meaning like you're making super big margins and there's some real value add to owning that element of the business, which typically isn't the case for small agency owners, people that have less than 100 clients that are doing less than say 5 million a year in revenue, less than $50 million in revenue. You don't want to vertically integrate. You want to go find smart people that are specialized in their area, and you want to go get them to do the thing, because it's like it's just too hard to go fast enough to compete in the market to deal with that level of complexity. I'm seeing the same thing, like, with RevyOps, where it's like we built, this all-in-one system that allows you to centralize your data, manage data workflows, and just turnkey reports. And yet, I can't tell you how many times I find that the number one competitor I have is not another solution. It's just some, junior agency guy or even a senior agency guy who's like, no, I'm going to go hire two devs and a Airtable and, and a Looker dashboard, and they're going to go spend $50,000 with some type of outsourced, guy. And then they have to hobble together it, and it's just still kind of like barely hanging on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, anyways, I digress. It's just something that I think is part of the agency space of like wanting to do it all, and so I just encourage anybody, especially on the infrastructure side, frankly, anything on that, is just go find good vendors and providers and be great at copywriting, be great at client success, be great at selling your service, be great at the processes of gluing those other providers together. Don't be the provider. It just, there's no
Yeah,
need.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. So, okay. So now I want to return to the original question where we were talking about like this dynamic of us both being agency owners, but we also have these other businesses. So I know I'm actually not taking on any more cold email clients at this point because I'm just completely filled up. And I'm much more focused on my software business and my revenue operations side of the business, which is we set up CRMs and support with, NAN setups. Uh, so by the way, feel free to hit up Dean for cold email too. But so that's how I'm doing it. I have my agencies kind of turnkey. I have a whole operational team over there and they're handling that. It seems like you have something similar, but what's going on with you guys? Leo obviously is kind of the head of your GTM on the email side. So shout out Leo. But how do you handle that? How do you balance all these hats?
Well, the answer is you don't try, or you will fail, massively. I decided pretty early on that I was not interested in being a solopreneur. I think there's a lot of temptation to go that way. It's obviously very profitable to run a business that way. But the reality is that similar to any consulting business, for example, you're constrained by your own time and your income is tied to that. And at the end of the day, even if your hourly rate keeps going up and up and up, there are just practical limitations to your ability to scale a business. So I decided very early that I would rather be less profitable and have other people on the train with me. And so we brought on Leo very early. We've now got a team of around probably 10 people doing various aspects of operations, go to market for cold email, go to market for cold calling and outreach via LinkedIn. And we're continuing to grow that business with a team in place. We've got channel experts that focus on different pieces. We've now got a dedicated sales team. And so I've tried my best as the business has progressed to jump in where I'm still needed, but over time try to pull people in to take over whatever that role is. So when I first started out, it was a lot of the operations and the fulfillment, getting campaigns out the door, getting clients meetings, etc. Over time, that shifted into me becoming the sales department effectively and running that function for a while and then replacing myself on the way out. Now, we were just talking about microphones and stuff. I like to joke that I'm trying out chief marketing officer now that I'm no longer chief sales officer. We'll see how that goes. I'm going on that journey at the moment, but eventually I hope to find somebody that will come in and take on a lot of those responsibilities as well. And slowly, roll by roll and piece by piece, we scale a team.
Yeah, totally. It's something I thought of when I was a younger entrepreneur. I'm 36 now. I've been in the for-profit game. I was in nonprofits for a number of years, starting the age of 24, so about 12 years now. And I thought there would just be this time where it was just like, oh, I'll get to a certain revenue stage and I'll just stop doing work. I just thought, and I could do that actually on my agency side. If I wanted to just go sit on a beach right now, that actually could happen, which is kind of cool. I could just literally go sit and just have like a nice income and just do nothing. My brain's not wired like that, and I have this weird neurotic tendency to build businesses. So here I am. But nonetheless, it's one of those things where if you are in startup mode, meaning like if you're doing less than say $2 million or $4 million, and you don't have a full team behind you, especially in an agency world, it's like you're going to be there doing some stuff,
Hmm.
and especially in the first 400,000, $500,000 in revenue. I'm talking to all these agency owners right now who are at their 3 to 5 client range, 3 to 10 client
Hmm.
range. Uh, and there's so many of them because the trend is hot. Everyone's in B2B, GTM, you
Hmm.
know, uh, every like guy who just recently graduated college is coming into the space because of all the new tools like Clay, and NAN. And everyone's in the same spot where like I'm hearing all nighters. I'm hearing like, oh, I don't know what to do. Like my client just left me because they didn't think the quality was good enough. So the cliche type of like early founder problems. And I think to your point, my biggest piece of advice to any early agency owner or founder or of any sort of company, SaaS company or not, is, really one, simplify as much as possible. So it's the old like what's his name, the founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, says, limit the variables and make everyone perfect. So one is just simplify, don't overcomplicate, which is partially by finding vendors like yourself, so you don't have to overcomplicate, do everything.
Right.
Two is come up with a minimum viable delivery process that has a checklist, that has clear steps, that just every single time is like a machine. And then three is choose your clients wisely and don't take on projects you're not ready for, because I see so often with new guys where they're like, oh, I took on a 10, 10 is probably not true, a 1 million email volume per month client. And I'm like, have you ever done that before? Do you
Right.
know how to find that amount of leads? Um, and the answer is usually no, but I'm gonna figure it out. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you in 60 days, and we'll see how you're doing, buddy. Uh, so
Yeah.
it's those three things. It's like process, client selection is huge, and then just keep it as simple as possible. And then choose the same client. Like, don't go and find 20 different types of clients, one in legal, one in finance, one in recruiting, because the hardest part you have as an agency owner is actually copy and understanding the ideal customer profile and understanding what offers work. And all the other stuff is more technical, building lists and that kind of stuff. But if you don't know the offer and you don't know the people you're speaking to, then you just have to go on a 3 month journey just to figure out the most basic messaging. Whereas if you have the same clients, you already know. Every
Right.
client is building upon itself. So those are my tips to like not end up like most of the agency owners who are just like quitting after a year. And you can get to stages like, Dean and I have gotten where have dozens of clients, you know, can go sit on a beach if we want to.
Yeah. We never end up doing it though.
Yeah, exactly. Because
that's
we're crazy
that's
people.
kind of the problem. But no, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think the other thing that I would add is that um, I think my number one piece of advice to people is hire before you're ready to do it, because
Mm,
you will regret waiting when you need to do it. And I get that it's a tough pill to swallow, because it's usually when people are starting to see the success, they see the money coming in finally, and
mhm,
the last thing they want to do is send it back out the door. But if you don't do that, then you really box yourself in, and you effectively become the jailer holding the key to your own jail cell. And I've
mm,
seen that happen to a lot of guys that are doing well, but are going crazy because
mhm.
everything is still them, or too much is still them, or it's them and a couple of stressed out VAs trying to keep everything together. And the reality is that, you know, if you want to run a business, it can't be just you.
Mhm.
A business should be able to run as a system and a collection of people. And hopefully you can go to that beach for a week and things don't completely fall to pieces. But hey, it's always a work in progress. But you've got to start doing that and flexing that muscle before you're ready, because you are not going to hire all the right people on the first go around. And you've got to just know that going in. It's a cost of doing business, and it's a learning curve that there's just no way around.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this is a good direction we're taking the podcast, because I feel like oftentimes I'm talking to the really senior GTM kind of person that deeply understands these concepts. But I think that the reality is the bulk of the market is relatively new to the space.
Hmm.
There's a lot of sales guys entering the space that used to be sales guys and now are trying to be GTM people or be agency owners. I would say that's actually the number one archetype, which is like sales guy turned agency owner because he was like, I could sell this stuff. You and I
Sure.
are kind of like that, right? And it's like, well, but I could actually fulfill this and make more margin. Little do they know how hard
Right.
it is. But I think that's the reason you have a profit and loss statement is that,
Hmm.
I spend probably $50,000 a month in excess of like what I have to run the business just because it gives me peace of mind that if I decide to walk away for a few days or I want to go to a conference, I'm not going to be stuck like on Slack channels with client fulfillment.
Hmm.
And and I think the key thing from a just like a cost or money standpoint for any junior entrepreneur is like it's not your money yet. It's like treat it like monopoly money. It's like when you have the money come in from that go around the board and you're like, oh, I got 200, pass go. It's like that's not your money. Don't put it in the bank. Just it sits there and you're gonna go buy some more properties. You're gonna go buy. In this case,
Right.
it's buy some people. Not in that sense. That sounds horrible. But buy human capital
Yeah.
to go build for you. And then for me, my first 2 years of my business on the agency side, I didn't pay myself a cent. Every single dollar went right back into the business and to hire people, to get the right systems. And to your point, I had been shocked. I've been in the game for like 12 years now, and more than that if you consider the politics and the nonprofit experience I have. I've hired close to 1,000 people in my life, especially on the door-to-door front when we'd lose like 10, like 90% of the staff, which is like 10 people a day. Uh, and it just turns out people hiring is difficult and human
Hmm.
beings are tricky and it's counterintuitive. And you're going to have to go through like years of refinement on the way that you assess people. So to your point, you got to start, you know?
It's a skill like any other.
Yeah. And it's a counterintuitive skill. It's like not logical, it's not obvious. I've been actually shockingly disappointed in myself about how bad I am at hiring people.
I don't take it personally anymore. I don't view it as a failure if there's a mishire anymore because there's just too many variables at play. And to be honest, the whole expecting to understand a person fully from 2 or 3 interviews is, I don't know who came up with this system, but there's a lot of holes in it.
So I actually, I same exact thought. So I came up with something called the 3-day challenge, and in my it's for hiring sales teams predominantly, but I have a version for marketing managers, and I have a version for full stack developers because I have to do all those hires. And the essence is simple: is you do a screening interview. Of course, you obviously don't do job posts. Job posts suck in my experience. Hire a recruiter, pay them $100 an hour. Takes about 20 hours per hire in my experience on the recruiter side. Have them do laser focused targeted search on LinkedIn on for the exact ideal customer, not ideal customer, but ideal candidate profile. Same thing as an ideal customer profile. Get that so dialed and be like, I want you to come up with a list. You're doing lead gen, man. It's like
Hmm.
come up with a list and go and just DM those people directly, and ideally from the founder profile because you'll get a much better response. And then do a screening interview with them. And then what I do is I say, look, if you want to move forward, I'd like to hire you for 3 days. And I have a very specific set of protocols I take them through. And if they fail any one of the tests, I have a full testing protocol. Then they're done, and they get a day rate. It's actually half day rate. So if they fail before 12 noon, they get half a day. If they get past 12 noon to the second piece of our test, it's like the Hunger Games, but like more sales oriented. Then we'll take them through. But that testing alone has saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars of bullshit. So I encourage anybody to also come up with like a 3-day challenge, which is really just find the number one thing that they have to do well and test them on that. And if
Yeah,
they suck at that, then why are you hiring? You know?
100%. I mean, I tell everybody that, well, first of all, I believe in probationary hiring to begin with. I don't think you really understand anybody until you've seen them work. You don't know until they've been in the role for about like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
the real stuff starts to come out. They're
Right.
sick every day.
Yeah.
They're always late.
Exactly.
They just don't, oh, the things are just always just not quite there. And none of this, on the interviews, they're perfect. I mean, they're all salespeople, or at least most of the people that we've dealt with are salespeople. They're great at interviewing. So I actually, we have a pretty short interview process now, but I just tell people like, look, you do not really have the job for about a month.
Mm.
in my view, until we just have seen you working enough to know. So my view at the moment, maybe my philosophy will change, is just hire fast and fire just as fast. So
Mm-hmm.
in the door fast, get them in the job, see how they run. And
Mm-hmm.
then if it's not going to work out, it becomes very apparent very quickly.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that for mid to junior. I would push back on super senior executives. The problem, although I still would have a probationary period for them, I'm talking about the higher fast piece because I've gone fast. So in other words, SDRs, 100%, like just get them in the freaking role. GTM
Mm-hmm.
engineers, get them in the role. Uh, Junior developers, get them in the role because you have protectionary influences at your senior management level that can catch bullshit. But the problem is like, especially if you're a junior entrepreneur, it's like you hire your first lead engineer, but you go fast and you have no clue like who that guy is.
Yeah.
My suggestion is go hire a fractional CTO off of Upwork, pay him, like find the guy that has $500,000 in build time and has like perfect scores and like worked at Meta, and pay that guy $500 for his hour of time and have him interview your last three candidates. It seems like why would I pay $500 or $300 or whatever the cost is? It will save you 6 months of bullshit and it will save your company. Same thing on like if you're not great at sales, hire somebody like me or Dean to like if we were willing to do that. Somebody like that who's a senior CRO who can detect bullshit, uh, and go slow over test if you have to. But you can really lose your hat. I've done it on two businesses where we hired
Yeah.
the wrong CTO and I just went 7 to 8 months in the wrong direction. And you can't know because it takes them 2 to 3 months to get started. And you're like, fuck, what do I do?
Yeah. Technical hires, especially if it's not your core competency, it's a difficult thing to evaluate, right? So I
Yeah.
agree that there's a whole other minefield if it's something like engineering and you don't understand how to evaluate people. But at the same time, I still believe in that you'll know them by their fruits kind of stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
just easier to see
100%. Yeah.
in the role than it is to see before because most people are, you know, pretty good at interviewing, if they've made it that far in their career. Um, it's the problem is after they get in the job,
Well, and
generally
what's
speaking.
so interesting to me, it's my own personal bullshit and like psychology, is that I'm not a people pleaser. I'm pretty direct. I'm pretty honest. I'm so honest that on the Jordan Peterson personality assessment, that on a politeness scale, I scored in the negative 0.001%, which means like it doesn't mean politeness in the traditional like do you have proper decorum, but
It's
it's
like, are you
how will
direct, basically,
are
right?
you direct, right? And I'm as direct as a human can be without being absurd. And that I'm putting that as a context to say, which makes me a good salesperson in a challenger sale. But it's also a challenge if like, you can step on toes and say the wrong thing.
Right.
That said, I have this people pleasy element of me when it comes to wanting people to win and succeed. And even in hiring interviews where I see somebody trip up, I'm just like, oh, they could do better. I'm like, I believe in this person. Let me give them feedback and see if they do better. And I make
Mhm.
excuses for the person in the interview process. This is my own fault of hiring. And my advice to anybody who's like hiring is just like, if any weird shit happens at all, they show up late, they say something weird, there's a weird vibe. It sounds crazy. There's a weird glance, there's some weird energy you get. Just stop it right there because the way it starts is the way it's going to end. And I've had to go through too many cycles of that to just realize like, don't give somebody a second chance. Don't give somebody a third chance. If it's not working in the first 2 to 3 weeks or the first month for any reason, just cut it off. I know that hurts, but you're going to have hundreds of those conversations over your career as an entrepreneur if you're doing big things.
It's true.
So, yeah, man. So okay, so getting back into your journey here, how did you end up at the two businesses? I mean, how did you even get into starting an agency in the first place, which then led to Scaled Mail?
Well, I think I always wanted to run my own show. And I mean, you see this with how many people are jumping into starting an agency. It's probably one of the most expedient paths into entrepreneurship that there is. Take the skills that you've accumulated if you got a few years into a career and apply them, to a service-based business. It's fast. You can set up overnight. The challenge obviously is scaling it up, as we've been discussing, but you can be in business super fast. So frankly, that's the reason why that. My background before was tech sales for the most part. And I've always wanted to run my own, tech business, or really any business. I've always been a business nerd. So the type of business has been almost less important. It's just must run business has always been the guiding principle. But I've got a lot of interest in, very interested in AI, very interested in software. And so the progression of agency to spin out SaaS to now working on some other SaaS products as well is a progression that I'm not that terribly surprised I've been going down, because every business serves as a foundation in my mind to building that next thing that could potentially be larger, right? Scaled Mail has the potential to be larger than the agency just based on margin profile and ability to scale and price point. And, any other SaaS products presumably could be even more so, especially if they can be further automated, et cetera. So that's a little bit of the governing philosophy, I guess. We've got more stuff in the works, so we're still working in the back in the chop shop, working on the next couple SaaS products here.
So it's interesting, if anybody who's interested in that path that was just described, there's a great book. It's on the screen if anyone can.
Oh, Andrew Wilkinson, I love him. Yeah.
Yep. Andrew Wilkinson, he owns a Tiny, which is like an investment firm. It's kind of like a Warren Buffett style investment firm that he mimicked off of Warren Buffett. He's a whole story about that. But it's called Never Enough: From Barista to Billionaire. I do not have any reason for plugging him other than I like the book because, it's that same story, which is start as an agency, you get some experience in the sales element of it, and then you then spin out a SaaS version. Now, he actually was developing applications as an agency, so it was very easy for him to then spin out a SaaS version. And then he sold that, then used the capital from that to then start buying businesses, to then scaling those businesses. And my own career has been that exact journey, which is I started as in an agency. Well, I was in nonprofits. I learned telesales, and I learned political fundraising, which was kind of like sales. And then I got into door-to-door door knocking and fundraising there, which then got me my first sales job, which then led to my first agency sales job. And that's where I got my first piece of equity. And then I met my first client, who then I became a part owner in that business. And then that just all went from there. But it started at the agency level with exposure to clients and exposure to problems, which then spun out. And I like the way you said about like getting to the next level, where it's like, if you have no skills or experience, the first thing is just go work for an agency. You're going to get to go talk to dozens of different client types and see all the problems and see the working BS that's going to come up. And then, I'm not saying go poach a client of your agency, but like, if for whatever reason, there's an opportunity where you could grow and do it ethically, you might be able to become like a full-time employee of another company. Let's say there's a SaaS company you want to go work for and be their CMO or something. That's what I happened to me, because I became a CMO at one of the clients. And then from there, I became a part owner of a business, and then we had some more money, so we bought a company, and the journey goes on. But to your point about like building to bigger outcomes, I really believe it's just like think 5 times bigger than you're thinking. That's like the number one piece of advice I heard from this billionaire, which was like, if you want to go big, just think 5 times bigger. And like, what do you want to change? What do you want to do? What problem do you want to act on? But it starts with just getting the basic skills, which I think an agency is a great entry point, to your point.
Agreed. And I think not enough people spend time on the business vehicle that they're in, or the business vehicle they want to be in, and then how much can that truly scale? Is there room for it to be large enough to get to wherever you're trying to go? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a hard no if it's not. It just means that might not be the forever thing. It might be the right now thing. And that's fine, because that might get you from here to there. And then just having the back of your mind, maybe that next step up, right, is that business that maybe has a higher entry point, or you need more funds to be able to even enter the space, but that has a larger aperture for how far you could go with it, right? Because I think a lot of people have this kind of one-itis, right? Where, we used to call that in sales, right? Where you're too attached to one deal, and that becomes
Mhm.
your whole pipeline story, and everything's revolves around the one deal. And, people are like that too with the business models. There's a million business models out there. And just because you're in one today or well positioned to be in a certain thing today doesn't mean you have to marry that business model forever,
Mhm.
right? It might be the vehicle for you to just make some cash, learn some skills that can then be applied to something that could be a lot larger.
100%. Yeah. And it's like there's a trope by Alex Ramosi who I just happen to have to reference every single podcast, which is it's a disease as well. It's unfortunate that he's that good, but he says something. This idea of like opportunity jumping, which is
Mm-hmm.
like this idea of you see an opportunity, you go, oh, that's a shiny object, kind of the rabbit issue of like, oh, I want to go over there. And then you have this trough of despair where it's like you actually get into the thing and you realize it's harder than it looks for a myriad of reasons. Um, and sorry, I'm getting a call. Uh, and so this guy keeps cold calling me off of WhatsApp because I put up a GTM post for we're hiring a GTM engineer.
Hey, I
I'm
mean,
like,
there you go. Be like,
everyone's
hey,
hustling,
you might
baby.
be a better fit for the cold calling team. It sounds like.
I know, seriously, I might have to get him going. That's aggressive. I mean, WhatsApp cold calls are now a thing. So can you help me? Where was I on that? I was talking about.
Hormozy opportunity jumping.
Oh, right. So opportunity jumping, and it's although I like you should always be trying to evolve as a it's very important as a first time entrepreneur that you don't jump too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of those things that 100% true statement, but time horizon matters. And so my rule of thumb is like jump into like an area, like call it like just, the poker table you want to sit at, the swimming pool you want to swim in, but make sure it's a growing space with a large audience with a lot of demand. That's like your number one decision. After that, then you can start to go, okay, where is my like specific niche? What business model, what product, what offering, what service? And then you can play. But my big thing is like, don't jump from like one swimming pool to an entirely different swimming pool unless you're absolutely certain that your swimming pool just absolutely sucks. But that means you made a big mistake in the first place. And the problem is people just go from like, oh, I'm going to be like, I don't know, I'm going to do I'm going to be a trader today. And then it's like, well, I'm going to go start a e-com agency tomorrow. And then it's like, no, I'm going to go do some like type of mobile, gaming app then the next
Right.
day. And it's like three different industries and you're not actually building a congruent skill set across those things. And I did that. I spent 5 years just jumping around like frenetically. And so I would just say like choose a big opportunity and just keep going deep on that and then spend a year in each spot. Don't jump 1 month to another because you're just never going to go deep enough to really explore. And that's an
Well, and I think,
easy
I mean,
entrepreneur problem.
you could think about this with RevyOps or with scaled mail. Um, there's a lot to just getting into a space, learning it well, and you don't have to have that idea preformed of where the need is. It
Of
will
course, yeah.
become apparent very quickly as you become a master in your new field and arena. It's not, I'm sure you did not have the idea for RevyOps or would never have had it
Of
without
course.
running cold email campaigns,
100%.
finding the issues with data, finding the issues with like, why am I paying for the same leads over and over again? And if you have the problem yourself, it's a pretty good indicator. And when you're running the same type of business as hundreds of other people, it's not that crazy of a leap to say, hey, they probably have the same problem. And if I solve it for me, I could probably solve it for them as well. And I think a lot of people, they come up with the idea first and then go find the problem. And it's way
Mm-hmm.
better to do it in reverse. Find a problem
100%.
first, solve it, and then that's the business, right? I mean, that's,
100%.
I would never, it's not like I woke up one day 10 years ago and said, oh, yes, cold email inboxes is where I want to
Guys,
spend my
can't
days.
wait to do
But,
that.
we solved a problem that we had, and it turns out that a lot of other people had the same problem. The same thing with your business. And I think not enough people approach it like that. Just immerse yourself in a field, and the problems will become very apparent to you very quickly. And then if
Mhm.
you have the wherewithal to go and tackle it and just try to solve it and go talk to some people and see if they've got that same problem, there are much worse ways to start a business than that.
It's absolutely the best way. And actually created this really cool diagram. I lost it years ago. Maybe it's somewhere in my Lucid chart archive, but it was this idea of like solution looking for a problem or problem looking for a solution. And the cliche number one mistake every junior entrepreneur makes is got this cool idea. And it's just an idea for whatever reason. They were just like, I want to do this thing. And it's kind of baked in some type of desire problem, but it's kind of opaque and fuzzy. And then they're just like, I'm going to go build a prototype. And they spend a bunch of money and designs and website. And then they go to sell it and it's crickets. It's like the cliche problem.
Right.
And especially like if you're in B2C land, I think like really B2C. I mean, like, you go and you put out like a free app on the app store with a vibe code that somebody could go like, I don't know, like put a frog face on like a filter or something like that. Okay, put out a prototype, that's like a very specific scenario. Maybe what we're saying doesn't apply here because now you're just playing with human dynamics and weird like behavioral stuff. That's kind of what happened with Instagram. Instagram was like, I want to, I don't think they probably didn't, and I'm making stuff up at this point, but I'm willing to bet that they weren't like, there's a deep problem with like an analysis of like color photoing stuff. They're probably like, I think it'd be cool to just make Polaroid type, photos and add some filters to it,
Well, yeah, I think it was
but
just Photoshop was too hard to use.
is that the problem?
I think that's what it's been a while since I read about Instagram, but I'm pretty sure it was, I can't use Photoshop on my phone. I don't want to spend all this time. I just want to 2 clicks, 3 clicks and post something.
Right.
And that was basically what they made.
And
Photoshop for
so
dummies.
that scenario, the problem is so obvious that it's like, you don't have to think much about it. It's like, let me just create something. And they put it out and they were $1 billion company 10 months later. That's actually one of the original reasons I got into business because I was like, hell, if that's that easy, let's go. Little did I know how hard it is. But the deeper you get, the reason I use that example is because the problem is kind of to some degree obvious. The hypothesis of I want a better way to filter things faster. But when you go into like deep business process stuff, the problems are not obvious or evident if you aren't deep into that space. So when I say that to like junior entrepreneurs, it's like if you're in the B2C land where you have kind of an obvious thing that you want to go test, slap something together. You don't have to go talk to a bunch of people, just try it. Whereas in our world, it's like if I went and spent the amount of money I've invested into RevyOps, close to $200,000 at this point, if I went and spent that money without deeply understanding why I'm building this very robust software that has this extremely advanced, technical background on DevOps and database management, I would just be blowing cash right now. It wouldn't make any sense. And so I think the higher the ticket, the more complex the space and the more complex the software, the more certain you have to be that you're actually solving a problem we're solving, because the time to develop a solution that's worthwhile and the time to sell it, which it could be months, it grows in timeline. So if you invest a year or 2 years to go to market and build the solution, you could be in it 500,000, a million, $2 million
Yeah.
before you ever really realize margin. So I say that to say like the way to get ahead of it is just go solve your own problem. To your point, which is like go experience it, document your problems, put it into a document. Here's my top problems, and then share it with people like you and go, do you have these problems? And if they don't say yes, if they're not like, yeah, dude, that's like, those are my problems. Like if that's not the answer, don't solve that problem because you're going
Yeah.
to just waste money, you know?
Yeah. Other cheat code, by the way, if nobody is in business doing that thing, probably means that there's no money there. So, you actually do want to have some competition. It indicates that there's a need. No
It's
competition is generally a problem.
the exception to that rule. This is this is straight out of 4 Steps to the Epiphany with Steve Blank, where he talks about there's old markets, segmented markets, was where you steal from an existing market, or there's new markets. And in new markets, you could actually be just recreating some new idea just for a new space. But RevyOps actually is a completely new type of product that hasn't existed within the specific GTM space. And it seems like I'm insane because it's like, well, why would I build it without any competition? And the only reason it can work in this space is because there are alternatives. There is competition. It's just not in the classic sense of like there's another app. It's Airtable or Supabase and
Right.
Looker.
Well, that's what I
Um,
mean. People are paying for similar value props,
right,
and you've made some adjustments so that your value prop is stronger. That's
right,
different than
right,
inventing the first database, for example. That is not a
right,
business
right,
I would push people to try to do, right?
right. Create the
Um,
first car. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a whole different ballgame, And
it
granted,
is.
some people, those are the people that you read about in history books, but there's a lot more of them that didn't make the books.
And it's true. I mean, if you think about the car, it's like the main big car providers that we think of, like the big, like, Fords and Dodges, they were not the first producers of cars. They
Right.
were like decades after the first producers of cars because a bunch of iteration and mistakes had to be made. And, even just like the evolution of what was the Ford's whole thing with the line, the production line,
Hmm.
like that was a big breakthrough, but it was like 2 to 3 decades into car manufacturing you know
Exactly.
so yeah, I tend to agree. But yeah, it's so easy, I think, especially in the early days of entrepreneurship, when people are getting into it, is like it's like a Zelda game. It's like you're on a black map, you don't even have a wizard, and you're just walking in a direction. You're just like, I don't have skills, I don't have knowledge, I don't know anything. Where do I go? And you just kind
Yeah.
of
Well,
bump into
that's why
something.
I really don't. I mean, you mentioned earlier in the call, uh, people going straight out of college or straight out of high school into agency ownership, and it's not that you can't do it, but
Mm,
I think people overestimate how long they would need to stay in corporate to get most of the value out, but they
mm,
underestimate that there's any value at all. And I think there's a
mm,
lot. There's a lot of value in spending 2 years in a space, for example.
mm,
I don't actually think you need to spend 10 most of the time. But I
mm,
think two is the difference between understanding problems in that sphere, knowing how it works, and just getting those kind of run of the mill soft skills that you kind of need to have been in the workforce in some professional capacity to accumulate. Not enough people respect that enough, in my view.
mm,
Like, I think
mm,
you are a much more dangerous entrepreneur if you're stepping in at 26, having done a short run in something or a couple of things after college, than you are if you try to do it right away.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think that the key skill sets that people need is they need, in my opinion, sales. So I think like everybody, if you just go, if you don't have to do it for a long time, do a summer, of just door knocking or cold calling of any type. Like just become an appointment setter or, a cold caller or a door knocker and just get used to what it feels like. It's a feeling of just being absolutely rejected and just being crushed and have to put in a lot of volume. And that's like the first thing that I think like if you want to be a founder, because you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to sell unless you're doing product led sales, like, and you're just a really great technical person and you can code your own thing and you have this real intuitive sense for problems, like we talked about, and you can just build the right solution and just like dog food it to people and say, hey, what do you think? And you get some traction that way. But that's a very unique person. I would say like because it's so hard to find product market fit or find what's working, the best thing to do is just go talk to a bunch of people, and that takes sales skills. That takes,
Yeah.
personality. But you can go get that at an agency. Go just be like my whole thing is like walk in the door and be like, dude, like first month's on me, free. I will cold call you for free. I'm here, like I'm hungry, like that's what I'll do. Real quick, I just got to say this one story because it's like for me, I could not get hired. I went to 40 job applications. I was a political science and philosophy major, and I just came off a bartending gig, and I was I was a campaign manager for two political campaigns back in 2012. We lost both. I went down and I bartended at Port St. Lucie, a place called Sandpiper Bay. It was a all-inclusive resort for Club Med, and I was just sitting there, and I distinctly remember I was the cabana boy. I was pretty good shape, delivering like drinks to like the rich uh, wives of it was like the uh, whatever like local beach there was, West Palm Beach wives would come up there on the weekends, and And there was this like little like closet where we would have all the drinks. So we would have like, our triple sec and our vodka and our, gin. And it was the crappiest little closet. And there was like this one little fridge that like made a lot of noise. And there was this like crappy like wood bench that wasn't even painted. There was like, it was just spiders all over the place. And I would go into this stupid closet and I would pour people's drinks. And I remember sitting on a box. Um, and I was just what am I doing? What am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I was like, am I going to go jet set and like work as a bartender around the world? There was literally this moment in time where I was like, I don't know what to do. And I had a choice. Was I going to go up and follow an ex-girlfriend to Michigan, or was I going to be a bartender? Nothing wrong with that, of course. I'm just saying it was this lost moment as a 23-year-old. And in between the political career. So I went up and I found a bartending gig in Michigan, Ann Arbor, where my girlfriend was going to get her second degree. And I started personal training, and I got fired from the bartending gig. And I was like, I literally was the worst moment of my life. I was like, what do I do? And I applied to 40 jobs. Nobody would hire me. And I finally got this call from Detroit Public Television. They're like, come up tomorrow for this canvassing director. You'll build this whole team of people. So I showed up and I was there, and the guy was like, sorry, we just closed applications. We're not going to take you on as a applicant. And I was like, this is what the whole point I was getting to is. I was like, no, you are going to talk to me. I was like, I did not take no for an answer. And I was like, give me 5 minutes of your time. It's going to be the best decision you've ever made. And he was like, fine. And so we sat down and he's like, why should I'm looking at your resume. You don't have much experience. You did a couple of political campaigns. We have people that are like 35, 40 that have deep management experience. Why should we hire you for the director of Detroit Public Television canvassing? And this is what I said. I said, if I am not the best canvasser, there was 800 people that he told me were in the company. If I'm like, there was 11 offices. I was like, if I'm not the best canvasser by fundraising with the best office within the first 6 months of me doing this, I will give you all my money back. I did a money back guarantee on the spot. And he's like, why do you have that confidence? I'm like, because nobody will outwork me. And I'm like, I will run door to door if I have to. I will work 24 hours a day. I will not
It's a
sleep.
Hormozy no-brainer offer.
It was a no-brainer offer. And I was dead serious. It was like this passion in my voice. 6 months later, number one canvasser out of 800 people, doubled the next best person, had the best thing. So I backed it up and I got a promotion. But my point to anybody starting is like, dude, just go knock on a bunch of doors, make Hormozy style offers, and make it such a no-brainer for the person, and just show up and perform and de-risk the offer. It's like, if you show up to me and you're like, dude, I'm going to just cold call for you, just start cold calling. Like, literally, if you want to work for me, pick up the phone and just like call me and be like, dude, I got another one.
Yeah, I mean, 3 of them in, you'll be like, all right, let's get it. Let's get you in here.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's an open offer. Anybody who does that to me, you are hired.
Yeah, done. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, people don't think enough about that, but you got to de-risk it for the employer as well. And if you can, generally speaking, I've never missed the money that I've sent to the best people. I'm just worried about sending it to people that aren't worth anything. And it's hard to discern that until you really work with them.
It really is.
Yeah.
What would you say the number one red flag is for people?
Oh, I mean, I have a speech that I give anytime I hire somebody, which is basically some degree of, if I'm ever wondering if you're working, then it's already not working out and you probably won't be here very long.
That's a good point.
I don't want to wonder. I don't like micromanaging. I don't want to have to tell you what to do. I want to hire smart people that know what to do next. And it's okay to ask questions. You don't have to have all the answers, but what you definitely can't do is wait to be told what to do. That is like number one pet peeve for people that don't work.
It's so true. And it's so easy to like I said, the people pleasing part of me is like, I see it happening. I'm like, hey, so I'm noticing, and it's like, if you start a conversation with that, it's like game over. It's like,
it's gay. You already know. If I'm asking, hey, am I right in thinking that we're not seeing a lot happening with fill in the blank name? And they always are like, no, it's been slow. And I'm like, all right, if you're still feeling this way in 5 days, then we're going to be done here with this. Give them the warning. And if there's not, and there's literally never been a massive turnaround. It always ends the same. It's just how they are, and they'll drift to the next job and do the same thing.
Yeah. And I think in the current version of reality where we're all working remote, I think it's become worse. Because I think you used to have like the B players and C players in the office, but there still would be some output because it's like, look, they're in the office, And
Sure.
it's
But
like, what
those
am
are
I going to
always the
do?
people that gamed the system. They knew how to do the least work possible and
Exactly.
still
Yeah.
look okay. It's not really the people you want,
Yeah.
if
No, you
you're running
don't.
a business.
No, you do not.
It's never these people. And, you know, I get it with the in office might minimize it to a degree. But to be honest, I think what it actually does is it lets them hide better. And frankly, I
Exactly.
think
That's exactly
remote
right.
reveals A players and C players really fast.
Hmm.
If you're looking, right? If you're not looking, then yeah, I guess you can get taken advantage of. But, the nice thing about having a small business is there's nowhere to hide. So, you can tell really fast what's going on in the business when
Yeah.
it's less than 50 people.
The number one hiring criteria I have now is like, give a damn, but it's like deep care and enthusiasm for the thing. So like if I feel like I'm being sold, like if like I feel like it's like you're telling me all the right things here, but I'm looking at results here and it's like it's not matching your words,
Mm-hmm.
And it's like if there's any sense of that, that's a big red flag. But also like the best people for me is like I'll get a message at like not saying you have to work at midnight, but I'll get a message at midnight or some random thing will come up where they're gonna be like, yo, check this out, what I just did. And then they like showed me, or like I said with the sales guys, like all of a sudden there's just like things happening, and you're just like, whoa, how'd you do that? And they're like, dude,
Right.
I
Things are
just
just happening. Yeah.
things are just
It
happening.
doesn't even matter what the things are.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
just are things happening or not. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great point. It's so easy to like second guess yourself, and I'm speaking for myself. It's so easy to be like, I'm gonna give them some more time, and it's like the
Yeah.
third
But
or fourth
you're
conversation, it never
elongating the
works out.
process to getting to the person that is right
Exactly.
by doing that.
Yeah. 100%. So look for real output, real results really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's like a lot of like hemming and hawing, and it's like, well, my father's, bachelor party just showed up, like it's like
Yeah.
I had to go over to this thing, and my wife had to take the kids to school, and it's like, look, we're all busy, man. Just show me results. Like I
Sure.
get it. So I know we've been on for a little while. We're gonna definitely have to do some follow up. Is
Yeah.
there
Well, let's
any?
do another one soon.
Is there any like? I like to ask parting words. Like, is there any like piece of advice, whether it's a cold email piece of advice, an entrepreneurial piece of advice, just life advice? What would you want to leave the audience with if you could leave them with one piece of advice?
Um, well, I think there's a lot of people that are where I was, where, I'm 36 as well, and really only went full time on entrepreneurship 2 years ago and wish I did it sooner. So it's like two pieces of advice. If you're coming out of school and you want to just jump right in, I was there, by the way, and I waited. I would advise doing something, anything, for a period of time until you know how that game works, and then start thinking about your unique version or value prop in that space that you've just been in. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Fix something that's broken in the space that you now understand. And if you're, let's say 32, 33, 30, in corporate, dissatisfied, want to do something, just do it. It has never been easier, but you just have to try. You have to go make a thing, offer a service, get one person to buy it. If one person buys it, more will buy it.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Where can people find you? I know we talked about Scaled Mail. What about Beanstalk or any other LinkedIn
I'm
profiles
on
or anything
X
else?
under my name, Dean Fiacco. LinkedIn, same thing. Scaledmail.com, beanstalkconsulting.co. Um, Scaled Mail, if you are already running cold email campaigns and just want to offload that inbox management piece, and Beanstalk, if you're running a business and you would like to see more pipeline and more outbound, and for whatever reason you don't have the time to do it, your sales team doesn't have the time to do it, then we will get you in front of more prospects.
Cool, man. Well, thank you for being on the show, and I'm sure we'll have you again. But again, anybody who's looking for cold email infrastructure, lead generation, definitely check out Dean. Huge fan. So thank you for being on, and we'll see you guys on the next Gen Sales Leader podcast. See ya.
Thanks, Ben.